I think the best is just to start at the beginning. Finding out my wife was pregnant. Finding out actually, honestly, finding out that she was pregnant with our son. I think is the best part because, the troubles didn't arise until we found out it was a boy. And so I think that's a very good place to start off at. I was ecstatic. I actually went night fishing with a friend. My wife was calling me saying, "Hey, you need to get home. There's something wrong with the dog. We got to take her to the vet." And I'm saying, "Well, just take her to the vet. You said I can go night fishing." So I went night fishing in the Mississippi River. And it wasn't until I got back early that next morning that I have a big old sign waiting on me on the chair that says, "Guess who's going to be a daddy?" With the pregnancy sticks taped to it on a big old foam board. So very shocking and very, very cool. Yeah, I was ecstatic. I've wanted kids for so long. Even if I was a little boy, I've always wanted kids. So actually having that, and I have Natalia, and obviously I think of her as my own, but actually having, an actual child that, that I was able to bring into this life, like I was part of it was, it's a feeling it's a high you can never get off of. Shortly after we found out it was a boy, I was trying to figure out, like, listen, because I'm the, besides my father, I was the last male Rigdon in the family tree. So it was very exciting that I didn't have to kind of have that burden on my shoulders anymore. Not that it was a burden, but just something that I can have a son, and because I've always wanted a boy, just to share my own experiences with and give him a life more than what I had. So we went to the imaging center and actually had the scans done, and I could see it. She put the big old screen up on the wall, and saying, "Well, there's the little turtle head right there," and I can just see his little pecker hanging out there on the screen. So instantly right there, which I had a feeling it was a boy. My wife at first thought it was a girl, but she swears up and down that she believes that it was a boy all along. She just didn't want to accept it. I guess just because she had Natalia for for 9 years previously, so she wasn't really expecting, didn't know what to do with a boy. So, but he's the greatest gift that's happened so far. I remember I was sitting down on the recliner, and I was watching TV, and it was shortly after we found out it was a boy. It wasn't very long after my wife brought up the circumcision topic. And listen, what are we going to do with, with knowing is he going to be circumcised or not? And I said, no, absolutely, he's going to be circumcised. It's, he should look like his father, and, it's, it should be my choice because you should look like his dad. And so she tabled it for a while, and then it just kept on progressing. I was in a dark place for a long time. As the arguments started getting born, my wife actually stood up to me more and brought it up more. The more I got more pissed off, more, I guess more felt like a betrayal, I guess, in a sense, just because, I was like, well, why are we fighting over this? Because, I'm circumcised and I'm fine. That generic topic that every male always says. And I didn't want to accept the fact there might have been something wrong with me. And I was always believing the propaganda, like, oh my God, it's nasty, foreskin is just gross. And I struggled with it for a long time. And my wife was, we went through a lot. And it almost cost us our marriage. I threw up divorce, and I was, calling her names and a lot of stuff that I regret deeply, and I can never continue to forgive my wife, and I'll always be ashamed of myself how I was at that time. Just because you don't know, a man's penis is pretty much his pride and joy, so, you don't want to accept the fact that maybe something may be wrong with it, especially in that sense. And I know it sounds twisted and messed up, but I just couldn't see the reality of it, I guess, that there was something wrong with me. I didn't know till after my son was born of the true damage that I had had to my penis. The males in my family are circumcised, or so I thought, until I realized later on that, I had grandfathers that were intact. And my grandfather was 94 years old and was intact and was blind for over 50 years and still be able to clean himself properly. But to the reality of it, of how I was during my wife's pregnancy, it's really hard to put into words. But I was more or less a sense of monster. I was awful things that I can never take back. Just because I had that that rage inside of me, like, you know, why is my wife fighting me on this? This should not be an issue at all. And I wish I could put it more into words, but it's really hard, because I'm going to a place where I've put it back in my mind, like I try to block it out, just because I don't want to relive it, just because I'm so ashamed of myself for how I was. And seeing my wife crying by herself, you know, crying in the shower, and not understanding why, you know, I was like, why are you crying, you know, it's not like it's going to hurt him, or so I thought, you know, and I didn't fully understand it until I actually sat down. It was just one night, I think it was around, she was 6 or 7 months pregnant, and she finally stood up to me. She said, listen, we are not going to circumcise him. I will leave you and take your son to protect him. And there's something just snapped and clicked at the same time, like I just was overfilled. I remember running to the bedroom so pissed off and upset at the same time, crying, you know, like, why is my wife doing this? Why am I, like, you know, why am I the bad guy here? I'm just trying to protect him. But in a sense, it was my wife all along that had to stand up and show her spine and protect our son, and I'm forever grateful to her for that, and I'll always love her forever for that, because my son is now 3 years old, and he has, you know, he is whole. There's nothing wrong with him. And actually seeing him coming on my wife was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Because after I seen him and I got to hold him in my hands, and I was like, oh my God, he is perfect. There is nobody coming close to him that's going to harm him. Why would I ever have somebody strap him down and mutilate him for no reason whatsoever? And that's, I was still hesitant, but I understood that my son was fine. And I wasn't very active at that point as far as being speaking up against it until I started looking into foreskin restoration and seeing the differences between how I was then compared to how I am now. And that's what really lit a fire in me. That's why I'm as active as I am now. A lot of that, the way I was when my wife was pregnant, you know, I work for the, you know, I was working with the state prison system at the time, and I still technically do. I was involved in an inmate assault, and I, you know, had to have surgery, so I've been off for a little bit. But that place just really sucks out your soul and your compassion. So, and you know, I think I'm not trying to blame that per se, but I mean, I've dealt with my own issues of my own, you know, adversity, growing up as a child and seeing things that I don't want nobody else to see as themselves, and seeing things inside the walls. It kind of puts a callus over you that, you know, you don't really want to feel true feelings, and because you can't show weakness inside there. So I think that's one of the biggest factors, was that I calloused myself so much that I didn't really see my wife's and my, you know, and her true feelings, and like how much it meant to her, you know, to protect our son. And I just put it off as, you know, well, you're going to be doing nothing to put a hinder to him, you know, and he's going to be made fun of, you know, his whole life. And I mean, and I can't stress how awful I was. And it's a shame, but that's why I try to live forward and speak up now more than ever, just because it gives me a little more clarity to seeing how I was, and actually interacting with these guys who are so full of rage that, you know, they don't understand why their wives are standing up to them. And since, you know, Jess released, you know, her interview was released, I've had several mothers message me personally on Facebook saying, listen, my husband was just like you. Is there any points you can help me with to give me to make sure that he can see the light, you know, to see the truth of circumcision in itself? And I talked to a couple moms, and there was one mom that I can remember briefly that me and my wife talked to ourselves, and I mean, I'm afraid to say that she probably ended up bowing down and to save her marriage. So, but I mean, and it's just, that's the way males are. I mean, they use that as a crutch to say that, you know, I will leave you, I will divorce you if we don't have it my way. And it's not your way, it's our way. You know, you don't understand, you know, that yes, the males play an important factor of birthing a child, of having a child become, you know, to life. But the mother is so amazing, just because she holds that baby. That's her, you know, the baby's in her nest in a sense, you know, and she raises that child from a little seed all the way till birth, and it's one of the most incredible things, and I'll never get to experience that. Which, I mean, it's not that I don't get to experience being a father, but as far as just as far as that whole journey and that whole bond that the mother and child have. And I think that's something that fathers missing. I think if more fathers actually had that real sense of, of the pregnancy, of actually being involved like that, I think it would change a lot of their minds. Just because they can see the compassion, like, listen, the mothers are just, they have this instinct for a reason to protect their child. And unfortunately some mothers just, they are so blinded by cultural backgrounds and just what's been going on for the last 100 years, and they don't even know the truth. They don't even want to research. They just think that the foreskin is a nasty, gross piece of excess skin, and they don't even understand what the true benefits are. I mean, why wouldn't you want to research it? Why just go into it blindly saying, listen, this has been done for so long? Why not just, dig into it? Don't research, circumcision. Research foreskin. Research the benefits, the functions, the mechanisms, and just everything that goes along with it. I mean, it's truly an amazing, body part that, most men here in the U.S. at this time, in my age, don't know about and will never experience. I've come to grow into an open mind and being more open and being more compassionate. That's really brought a different view to my eyes, a different sight. My wife is pregnant with our third child, and whatever he or she may be, whether it be boy, girl, intersex, I'm just going to love it all the same because it's mine. It's my baby. It's our baby, and just research it. It's not hard. I mean, don't just go looking at something on Google right fast. Just type in circumcision and you say, oh my God, we have something from the Mayo Clinic that says recommended, or, AAP says benefits outweigh the risks. Read the actual summary reports. Read how there was 38 international physicians that condemned American doctors, basing it pure on cultural bias. Read that 70% of the men's population in the entire world is not circumcised. Read that there's up to 20,000 fine touch nerve endings in the foreskin itself, which is twice as more sensitive than the female clitoris. Research that. Women are, 8 to 10 times more prone to get an infection or urinary tract infection than an intact male, but yet they have a whole aisle at Walmart dedicated to them for hygiene. If it's that we don't treat infections with a blade, we treat it with antibiotics. Didn't fully understand it until I actually sat down and really researched it myself before my son was born, to see the full spectrum of what this amazing body part is, and that why boys are being mutilated every day because of it. And it completely baffles me that I had to be out here standing with my sign showing that I am pissed off that I was mutilated at birth, and I will not let, if I can prevent one circumcision from happening in a day, talking to someone, interacting with them, speaking with other international physicians like we did at the past ACOG convention in Nashville, was very really surreal, just because they've even confirmed that I spoke to a few Swedish doctors there over the weekend, and they were just completely astounded that we're still continuing this practice against our boys. I hold a lot of resentment towards myself, and I'll always hold it to myself, because my wife was trying to simply protect our son. And I said some awful shit. I mean, I was very calloused. I've called my wife a bitch, a cunt, and I'm so ashamed.
I think you can forgive yourself because...
Well, I mean...
It all ended well.
Well, but what I'm trying to say is that I don't want people seeing in this movement how I was. But people need to know where it is for a male in my caliber, where I thought that circumcision was the best possible thing, and it's really not. And I was willing to throw away my marriage and a future life with my wife and my spouse, my soulmate, that we have so much in common, and we butt heads because we have so much in common, and we're both hard-headed. But we make it work. I mean, we may fight like cats and dogs, but at the end of the day, we both compromise. And mothers, if you see this, there is hope. You have to stand up to your spouse, your boyfriend, your husband, your fiance. Protect your son. Don't give in no matter what. If he's going to file divorce, then he's not for you. And you and your son are better off. And I'm glad that my wife was willing to go to that measure to protect our son. Because even though I might not have accepted it then or realized it then, I would have understood it now. And I don't think I could have ever forgiven myself if I went to that level. So I'm glad I got my head out of my ass and really sat down and researched it, because my wife had a plethora of information. She was just literally begging me, saying, please just read the first page. Open your eyes. Maybe you'll see. And then until, it come down to my wife just sitting there, big and pregnant, bawling her eyes out. And I'm just sitting there just like in shock and all, like a deer in headlights, just like, why the hell are you crying? And I just finally sat down and I just read. And it just really clicked. Just research, mothers. Stand your ground. Don't give up. My favorite saying is endeavor to persevere, which is, to me, it means always keep fighting and never give up. So your son will always be your son. He's always going to be your blood. Your husband or your spouse or your boyfriend or whoever you were with at the time is not always guaranteed, but your children always are. I would rather answer to, face the consequences of losing a spouse than ever having to face that dreadful question to my children. It's like, why Dad? Why did I get circumcised? Why was I strapped down to a board and mutilated at birth? And I don't think I could have ever really given him an answer. I mean, I would have just lived with regret the rest of my life. So, I thank my wife, and I love you, Jessica Rigdon. You are the greatest thing that happened to me, and I'm so glad you protected our son. I love you.